I'm Priyanka Devi Ketramayum. I'll be hosting the event for a brief period. As we all know that Manipur has been engulfed with violence, which some groups has described it as a spillover from the conflict situation in neighboring state of our country and the larger geopolitics and also from the ideological differences that we have in our small state Manipur. So it is important for us to understand the problems and aspirations that stem out from Northeast India in conjunction with the larger state politics. And it is also important for us to nullify the larger disinformation campaign that has been surrounding us throughout the entire conflict in Manipur. And such discussion and exercise is the need of the hour, and it is immense pleasure and honor to announce that in order to have a panel discussion, some of the invitees that are present in today's event are former Manipur High Court Chief Justice Siddharth Midrul, Major General Rajan Kochar, Vikshit Seva Medal, Vice Chairman of NCNB, and also the advisor of UPSC, Sir Pradeep Panjobam, Senior Journalist and Author, and also the editor of Imphal Review of Arts and Politics. Dr. Sampa Kundu, who is a consultant of Research and Information System for Developing Countries. Dr. Arambam Noni, Associate Professor, DM University, Imphal. Sir Harokcham Anil, who is a social activist and geopolitical analyst. Dr. A.C. Apam, Assistant Professor, Jamia Millia Islamia. And we also have Professor Komosh Singha, who will be giving the keynote address of today's event. And Professor M. Amajit Singh will be the moderator of the panel discussion. And I'm deeply honored and extend my heartfelt gratitude to the organizers of today's event for giving us the platform to discuss on the way forward or the future that uphold us. The three organizations which has given us the platform are Team Meitei Personalities Manipur, Meitei Alliance, and Manipur International Youth Center. I'll give a brief introduction of the organizers. Meitei International Youth Center was established on 13 February 1997 with the main objective of the political emancipation of the struggling people of Manipur and the dissemination of information of the United Nations system in Manipur. This center works in area of human rights and democracy, problems of youth and other community-based work. The other two organizations, the Team Meitei Personalities Manipur was formed to counter misinformation and divisive propaganda. Starting as a think tank, it grew into a movement driven by truth and justice. It is supported by dedicated diaspora members. It engages in debates, promotes factual narratives, and inspire unity. Last but not the least, Meitei Alliance, founded in November 2023, is a non-profit, apolitical, transnational platform of Meitei organizations. It is also a platform which primarily initiated by organizations and individuals who are based outside the state of Manipur or India, who are based outside the state of Manipur and also outside of India with motto of unity and progress. So I would like to request all the speakers for today's event, former Manipur High Court Chief Justice Siddharth Midrul, to please come up on the platform and take the chair. Next, I would like to request Major General Rajan Kochar to come on the stage and be seated. Next, I would request Sir Pradeep Panjobam to come on the stage. Next, Dr. Sampa Kundu. Next, I would request Dr. Arambam Noni. Yeah, okay. Then Harokcham Anil, Sir Harokcham Anil. Dr. Arambam A.C. Appam. Oh, okay. Sorry, I said Arambam A.C. Appam. It's Dr. A.C. Appam. Sorry. And I would request moderator of today's panel discussion, Professor M. Amarjit Singh, who is a professor at the Center of Northeast Studies and Policy Research, Jamia Millia Islamia.
I think what we can do is some of us can lean back, the others can move forward.
Yeah, that's right. That's my interpretation.
I think some of us can sit.
So for felicitation of the invitees, I would request Mr. Hiro Thokchom, coordinator of today's program and managing director, Iwoyama Hospital, and founder of TMP, to give an honor. It's okay. To former Manipur High Court Chief Justice, Sridhar Mitru.
Thank you.
I would also request Mr. Hiro Thokchom to give an honor to Major General Rajan Kochar. Next, I would like to request Professor Santa Laishram, Professor at Mathematics, Indian Statistic Institute, to give the honor to Sir Pradeep Panjobam. And also to Dr. Sampa Kundu. Next, I would request Madam Santa Lembi Lissam, research scholar at Tata Institute of Social Sciences, Mumbai, to give an honor to Dr. Arambam Noni. And also to Sir Harokcham Anil. Next, I would like to request Sir H. Nongdrin Khomba Singh, Corporate Executive. If you are present, please give an honor to Dr. A.C. Appam.
It's my phone.
To Dr. A.C. Appam. To proceed further, I would request Professor Komal Singha, Center for Economic Studies and Planning, School of Social Sciences, Jawaharlal Nehru University, to give the keynote address of the event. Sorry, I left Dr. Amarjit. So I would request again Mr. Hero Toktom to give an honor to Dr. M. Amarjit. Sorry, Professor M. Amarjit. Now I would hand over to Professor Komal Singha.
Thank you, Priyanka. Good afternoon, each and everyone present here. Thank you, organizers, for giving this opportunity to introduce a very important topic, understanding the barriers of Northeast India and Manipur violence, the way forward, which concerns all of us directly or indirectly. We are also very fortunate to have very learned and well-informed speakers covering legal, military, geopolitics, socioeconomic, and civil society aspects to discuss, debate, and suggest some doable solutions to these issues, especially in Manipur. As we all know, Manipur was thriving in almost every sector until recently. Unfortunately, all of them were distorted on May 3, 2003, and the state has been engulfed in the Meitei Kuki ethnic conflict ever since. As the Manipur violence has been ongoing for nearly 2 years, no one in the state has been left unaffected today, with the poor and innocent citizens being disproportionately affected. It is spilling over to other states of the region, such as the Mizoram, Tripura, and Assam. Urgent intervention is required, and I do hope that the learned speakers of this discussion will definitely highlight the way forwards, not only for the state of Manipur, but also for the northeastern region and the country as a whole. Due to this conflict, Manipur's economy has taken a back seat, and it may take 20 to 30 years to regain the pre-May 2023 level. In fundamental economics, growth is measured in terms of GDP per capita, and it can only be generated when the resident of the country or the state work. However, economic activities in Manipur has been hampered since the violence broke out and are completely shattered for the 60,000 people living in the relief camps. Many employees have been absent from the office since May 2023, when I estimate the direct income loss of the 60 to 65,000 IDPs alone. Using the GDP per capita at constant price, say in 2022-23, the Manipur's GDP per capita was at 65,000 around, and it comes to the 845,000 crore in 2 years. Most public schools have been converted to relief camps, and youths have taken up arms to protect their lives and territory. When children, the youths, choose the wrong path, the consequence will be very disastrous for the society or for the country. National highways that connect Manipur to the rest of the country, commonly known as the lifelines of the state, have remained closed since the violence erupted, despite the center's promises to protect them. This directly impacts transport and communication sector and the people who depend on this sector, resulting skyrocketing the essential price commodity. say 100 around that some essential commodities in Manipur, the 100% at the higher than the outside the state. And poor are the most affected by this inflation. The national highways have been shut, and as the national highways have been shut, everyone in the valley, rich or poor, has to fly by air. Imphal Airport has become the busiest airport in the entire northern region next to Guwahati. The airline operators have capitalized on this opportunity and hiked airfares to the maximum level possible. So I calculate that there's 300 to 400% has fare hike. This makes one of the biggest obstacles to the poor, basically, notably that the patients that are moving out for treatment and students studying outside the state. Despite all these difficulties and hardships mentioned above, the two communities are still at loggerheads, disregarding the long historical ties and symbiosis relationship between them. This Manipur conflict and ethnic divide sometimes appear to have been capitalized on and politicized by certain elements for their interest. They like to keep the pot boiling. Manipur, the millennia-old multicultural civilization, is experiencing serious ethnic polarization today, with little effort being made to preserve its unique historical and cultural characteristics. The wound and the ethnic divide are quite deep, and they are getting complicated with each passing day, and the conflict dynamic shifts constantly to different dimensions. It appears that no adequate efforts has been made to douse the flame so far. So the state, I mean the government, appears to have abandoned both the communities to their fates. For example, the Ministry of Home Affairs recently stated that the Jiribam tragedy, in which the 6 women and the toddlers were kidnapped and killed, is a matter of maintenance of law and order that falls under the state government's responsibility. On the other side, the chief minister is unable to reach the Jiribam by road because the security forces are unable to protect the highways which are under the union list or union subject. Citizens are confused about who is responsible for the law and order, the state government or the central government or the citizens themselves. It is also stated that the various capacities that the current ethnic violence in Manipur is a cumulative effect of the failing to address the long-standing, the complex issues of ethnicity, illegal migration, insurgency, narcotic drug trafficking and poppy cultivation, political and economic resource sharing, land and forest rights. However, all these are not limited to Manipur. They arise in other states as well, particularly in the northern region. Each of these that can be easily addressed separately and successfully without resulting in ethnic conflict. Even if it sparked due to some misunderstandings, it should not have lasted 2 years if the state institutions are effective enough. In totality, the Meitei Kuki conflict continues despite revoking the March 27, 2003, the High Court order which was claimed to have triggered the current violence. Second, despite the centers taking over the state's overall security command backed by ASPA, the violence has not abated. With this background, I would like to raise 3 academic basic questions which the learned speakers of these discussions are expected to touch upon. First, what invisible hands are at play in the ongoing Manipur violence? Second, are we waiting for the William Jertman's hurting stalemate situation in the conflict theory, which implies that the Meitei and Kuki fight for a long time and then the conflict automatically de-escalates when they are completely exhausted and unable to intensify the fight any further? Third, is this protected conflict the result of the property rights dilemma, as the Ronald Coase articulated in his institutional theory? In Manipur, the responsibility for the protecting the states, that the territory, the people, and the property are not clearly defined. I believe today's discussion will address the issue mentioned above and help to resolve this conflict as soon as possible. We deserve a peaceful life and a prosperous life in Manipur. Thank you all. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Komal Singha, for giving a brief analysis and raising critical questions in regard to the conflict in Manipur. To proceed for the further program and to start with the panel discussion, I would hand over to our moderator, Professor M. Amarjit.
Thank you very much. Do you want me to? Okay, I'll go off. Yeah. Good afternoon. First of all, I would like to thank the three organizers for having this panel discussion, and the Professor Komal has already laid down the context of the discussion. And as we know that the lots of discussion has taken place on the ongoing conflict in Manipur in different platforms. And I hope that the audience who are gathered here are very much aware of what is going on in the state of Manipur. And it is a very, very unfortunate that this kind of conflict, as Professor Komal has noted, that has been going on for so many days and so many months. Very, very unfortunate. And this is happening in a state which is home to different ethnic communities who have been living very peacefully for many, many, many years. And what we need today, since we have heard about the conflict, we have listened to various discussions in different platforms. So now what we need to do is that, as the topic of this panel discussion has also very much highlighted, is that now we need to move forward. That is what we want. We want peace in Manipur. Now, so many things have happened in terms of conflict and the violent conflict. So therefore, what we want is a peaceful Manipur, which is stable, which is developed. So in order to discuss the situation in Manipur, how to bring peace in these states, so we have very 8 distinguished speakers. And if I have to, if you allowed me, I will just read out the names of the today's panelists. Sri Siddharth Mridul, the former Chief Justice of Manipur, sir. Sir is here. And we have Major General Rajan Kochar, sir is here. And we have our beloved brother Pradeep Panjobam, sir is also here. We have Dr. Sumona Das, and my friend Sampa Kundu is also here, and Noni is here, and then the Haurukpam Anil is also here, and my colleague from Jamia Millia Islamia, Dr. A.C. Appam. So now we want to listen from them, so I don't want to waste much time. So I will, as the organizer has requested me, so I will request all the panelists to stick to about 15 to 20 minutes. If possible, if you can speak for about 15 minutes, that will be very good. And at the end of the panel discussion, we will have question and answer kind of discussion. So without wasting much time now, I would like to request Sri Siddharth Mridul, sir, former Chief Justice of Manipur. Over to you, sir. You can. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Please.
Kurumjari and good afternoon. I would not limit myself to the arc described by Professor Kamal when it comes to dealing with what ails Manipur today and what needs to be done going forward. I'm very happy to be here because, as Majrooh Sultanpuri very famously said in his celebrated couplet, मैं अकेला ही चला था जानिबे मंजिल मगर लोग साथ आते गए और कारवां बढ़ता गया. The idea is that the organizers have managed to get together all of us, and we are all on the same page. We are all ad idem that now's the time for us to reverse this pernicious trend that seems to be heading towards completely upending peace and harmony in Manipur. I don't know what the historical reasons are, but I am beginning to subscribe to the idea that there does seem to be an invisible hand. Whose hand it is not very clear to me yet. There could be a number of factors at play. It's on. All right. Great. The number of factors at play. First of all, the timing of the incident, which came about in the immediate aftermath of the direction issued by the Manipur High Court in relation to the consideration of Maitis to be included in the scheduled tribes. My belief is that the trouble was anticipated before that order was actually delivered. That's my belief. And if that is so, then there was evidently a threat perception which was felt even prior to the determination of that matter and the issuance of those directions, which I have repeatedly said that the directions were innocuous. And I have given why I believe that the directions were innocuous. The center asked the state government to furnish a socio-economic report in relation to whether Maitis should be considered for inclusion in the category of scheduled tribes. For 12 long years, nothing came out from that information that was sought by the center. an organization, a Meitei organization, filed a petition before the High Court. There were a number of reliefs that were asked for. One of them was that the state should be directed to respond to the center in relation to the socio-economic survey, which is eventually what the High Court directed. The High Court, as I have been at great pains to, and I sound repetitive when I say this, the courts have no jurisdiction. Under the scheme of the Constitution, the courts have no jurisdiction to direct anybody to be included in the list of scheduled tribes. There is an entire self-contained code in the Constitution along with the Commission, and an entire process that needs to be followed before any category of persons can be included in the list of scheduled tribes. I'm digressing. I'll come back to what I believe needs to be done. And I've said this repeatedly. The problem has constantly gathered momentum and has assumed alarming proportions simply because of the long stay of internally displaced persons of both communities in relief camps. I've had the benefit of visiting relief camps inhabited by displaced, uprooted persons from both the communities, the Kukis as well as the Meiteis. And the constant refrain that I have heard when I have had occasion to sit and talk to them is that we want to go home. We want to go back to our lives as they were before the violence broke out, not just in the valley but in the hills as well. Is that too much to ask? Is that too much to ask the powers that be that every individual who is currently residing, for want of a better word, in these relief camps be returned to their homesteads and be afforded protection, not just for their lives, for their limbs, but also protection for their properties, for their livelihoods? Is it too much to ask? There are 60,000 of them, if I remember correctly, at approximately 60,000. Is it too much to ask? We have more than 60,000 boots on the ground in Manipur. And if we were to even consider the outrageous idea of giving protection to each individual who is there currently in a camp, it would suffice. The 60,000 boots on the ground are today being employed to keep the communities or the miscreants within the communities apart. Not everybody is at war. The communities are not at war. Individuals are at war. Individuals with an agenda which may or may not be evident are at war. What their motivation is, what their end game is something we can debate forever. But I'm sure that we haven't gathered here for that purpose. Postmortems can occur later. What must happen now is that peace and normalcy must return to Manipur. We must douse this fire, because if we don't do it now, and if we wait for conflict fatigue, as the professor put it, there may be nothing left to protect. There may be nothing left to protect. We are faced with a situation where the ownership and possession of weapons, sophisticated weapons, by individuals threatens the security and integrity and the lives of not just the people of Manipur, but the entire country. And it's not just sophisticated weapons. There has been talk about sniper rifles, and I remember that one police officer got shot from a distance of 3 odd kilometers. If you are going to permit this kind of weaponry, even if it's coming from across the border in Myanmar, if you're going to permit this to happen, nobody in the country is safe. And if, as is being suggested, that a part of the problem is the narcotics, the growing of poppy, cultivation, if that is the problem, then it is a law and order problem, and somebody needs to address it. Why is it not being addressed? Is what concerns us. And what is the consequence? The consequence is inflation, hyperinflation. The professor put it at 100%. But in a lighter vein, I must tell you that every time I flew back to Imphal, I used to carry vegetables with me. And you must understand, besides jobs with the government and with the universities, there is no employment. Even in the valley, there is no employment in Imphal. There is no employment. There is no demand. There is surge pricing everywhere, and it is not limited to airline tickets. The only way you can go to the valley today is if you airdrop. And there is only a handful of flights operating to Imphal from Delhi, I think just one, and a few from possibly Guwahati and Kolkata. The point is, the people of Manipur who are talented, hardworking, intelligent, and in the services sector, in sport, in literature, in drama, the Manipuri dance is something that has worldwide acclaim. Why is it that we are willing to destroy an ancient culture? And for what? What are we going to achieve? Is it as simplistic as being a battle over whether Meiteis should be granted scheduled tribe status? I think not. I think not. I think the reasons are far more diverse, and I'm just hoping that they are not diabolical. I'm just hoping that this is not part of some grand design on somebody's part to completely destabilize not just Manipur but the neighboring states and the entire region. And eventually, if that region is destabilized, it could very well destabilize the entire country. Because we have instances of elected representatives going overseas and making speeches which don't help matters back home. And this is a conflagration that will engulf not just Manipur and Mizoram and Tripura, but it will also engulf eventually Nagaland. It will also engulf Assam. It will also engulf the hill tracts of Chittagong. Are we willing to replicate what is happening across the border in Myanmar in India, is what we need to ask ourselves. So therefore, my simple demand, and if we were to pass a resolution today, the simple resolution that I would propose is that we must return people to their homes and to their lives, regardless of their ethnic identity. That's all that we are asking for. Return them home and let them go back and resume their lives. That's all. Thank you very much once again for having me here. Jai Hind.
Thank you very much, sir, for your very, whatever you have said are very, very important in this situation in Manipur. And you have very, you have touched upon that, what is very interesting is that, that we want to go home. That is what, when you went to those people, those who are in the camp, so that is what they want. They want to go home. But now, what the state is doing, or what the state is going to do, that is the question. And you touch upon all this issue, and you talk about about 60,000 soldiers who are now stationed in in Manipur. And so these are very, very interesting intervention from your side. It was, I mean, it could have been very nice if we have, if we get a chance to interact with you for a longer period of time. So anyway, thank you very much. We will come back to you during the question and answer. So without wasting much time, may I now request Major General Rajan Kaushal. Sir, over to you, sir.
Good afternoon to everybody. It's an honor and a privilege for me today to be here amongst you and give you my views. I've been given to speak on this subject, impact of the political situation in Bangladesh and Myanmar, and its impact on the northeastern states of India. I will be dwelling upon these two countries, and that is why I have a presentation, because certain maps are going to be shown, and the understanding would be better in case we look at these maps. This aspect is known to everybody. I won't be dwelling upon it much. The northeastern states, if we also take Sikkim along, we have 8 states with us. And criticality of northeast, I wanted to highlight here, is the Siliguri corridor. And we need to understand this criticality, because today if we are sitting in the government in Delhi, and if we are not able to defend this corridor, if there is a problem in the northeast, the Bangladesh overlooks the Siliguri corridor. Bhutan is one country again. And the Chinese designs here are very well known to us. Doklam incident cannot be forgotten. So that's why the criticality of the northeast to the rest of the country, I wanted to start my talk with that. Now, the strategic importance of northeast, we all know how important northeast is to us. Please remember that northeast is extremely important to the rest of the country. If there is a belief in some of us today that northeast is not relevant to the design and plans of the nation, I think it should be set aside. 6,387 kilometers of the international border, the total international border is around 15,000 kilometers. 99% of these borders of the northeast are with Bangladesh, Myanmar, China and Bhutan. 40% of India's borders are in the northeast. So that is why when we talk about the invisible force, I just heard some of the speakers talking about the invisible force. I will make them visible today. Because they are no longer invisible. And we need to understand this aspect loud and clear, because I speak as a defense person, as a defense analyst, and I speak with facts, and enough of evidence is available today to suggest there are inimical forces who are working to destabilize northeastern India with specific reference to Manipur and Mizoram. Straight away, let us focus on Bangladesh. Everything changed on the 5th of August as we think. But let me tell you, even before 5th of August, certain inputs were available on Bangladesh which were not conducive to the security environment of this country. But the Jamaat-e-Islami, if you have been observing this group of people in Bangladesh, this problem started almost 15 years back. And it was slowly building up in Bangladesh. But they were not allowed to emerge stronger because in the last elections also, of course, it may have been rigged. They just got, 10% of the votes. The Sheikh Hasina factor has become a very important focal point today because today's morning newspaper carried out the news that Muhammad Yunus wants India to send her back. The relations with India and Bangladesh are no longer that cordial. We have a border of 4,096 kilometers with Bangladesh. 3 states are affected here: West Bengal, Meghalaya and Tripura. I have information that Pakistan IIC has already started working with the Rohingyas in the Chittagong hill tracts. Bandarban is the place. Brahman Baria in Tripura. The movement has already started. Khadim Nagar, Sylhet area, opposite Meghalaya. Just giving you some inputs here that the Pakistani movement in Bangladesh has already started to destabilize India. Consequently, the BSF battalions have been moved to the zero line today. And the Indian Army formations have been redeployed in 4 of the locations in Bangladesh, already shown on the slide. So what is the geopolitical dynamics as far as Bangladesh is concerned? One is the Chinese influence now is coming up in a big way. A Bangladesh army chief speaks to his counterparts in China and he's starting to get weapons and ammunition from them. Why is Bangladesh asking for weapons and ammunition when there is an interim government today there? The elections have not yet been taken place, and the priority of the government in Bangladesh has to be to stabilize their country, to stabilize their economy, which has been badly hit. But they are going for arms and ammunition. Please see the design here. A Pakistani 2 ships have already disembarked in the ports of Bangladesh with weapons and ammunition from Pakistan. USA, don't forget, was always keen to come to the St. Martin Island there. And St. Martin Island, if you can actually see that it's on the top of that map, a very, very strategic area. And once the US is there, the Chinese expansion in Myanmar will also come to an end. because China has got economic interests in Myanmar. I will be coming to that. And the vulnerability of the Indian Ocean will also be there, because Andaman and Nicobar Islands will also get affected. Our actually reach in the Indian Ocean will get affected. And if you go further downwards, you will come to the Malacca Straits. That is why China is interested in this area, because Malacca Straits is a bottleneck for the Chinese trade, and almost around 70% of the Chinese trade moves through this route. So the vulnerability as far as India is concerned with Bangladesh is West Bengal, Tripura and Meghalaya. Now I'll come to Myanmar. Everything was okay, more or less, till the coup took place. And if you look at statistics from February 21 till now, and if you go back between 2016 to 2021, you will see a drastic change in the movement of people from Myanmar to India. The ASEAN laid down 5 points. A coordinator was appointed, peace and tranquility was asked for, talks were asked for, but nothing has happened. The irony is, China is supplying weapons both to the military junta as well as to the rebels. Because Chinese has economic interests here. And if I take you to the next one, you will find that China has invested in Myanmar special economic zone, and there is a gas pipeline which starts from the Rakhine state and it goes up to Yunnan. And today, who is ensuring the safety of this pipeline? Arakan Army. Arakan Army, and as well as the 3 Brotherhood Alliance. The New Democratic Alliance and the Arakan Army, and the third one, I'll just tell you that it's on the slide. So these are the fragmentation, what has happened in Myanmar post 2021. From where Myanmar is military junta is ruling, it is not ruling any longer. There is a NUG government, a national unity government, which has got its headquarters in Washington. Let me tell you, this NUG is running a shadow government in Myanmar today. All the rebels are under the umbrella of this government today. The entire funding, entire strategy is being orchestrated from across the borders. There is a definite information that much before this has happened in Manipur, more than 9,000 militants have already moved inside into Mizoram as well as Manipur. So there was a design already taking place. There was a strategy which was already being built up, and today what I'm telling you is nothing to do with the ethnic violence which is happening in Manipur, because that is a result of this strategy. We have the protected area permit now. There is a video which is in social media of Stevens, Daniel, I think Stevens, he's the person. And he is applying, or he is giving drones, bulletproof jackets, and things like that. And this video is a very old video, it's not a recent video. So this problem now is that you know what is our actually concern? Our concern is much beyond Manipur today, because Manipur is a concern for us. But what is happening is that our connectivity with Myanmar has got affected. All of you would have actually heard of the Kaladan multi-modal transport project. This was a strategic project that in case we lose Siliguri corridor, we have an access to northeast India through Mizoram and Myanmar. So the design, without going into too much of information and details, let me tell you, this invisible hand is becoming more and more visible today. Problems in communities are always there. Communities always resolve their problem by talking to each other. Government is a facilitator. But what happens is, when you start arming the communities, when the Metis also get arms, I've got some information to share with you. In the last 1 year, 1,500 weapons in terms of M16s.
Sir, sir, 1-2 minute में खत्म कीजिए.
अच्छा, but I'll just, M4 AKs, machine guns and rocket launchers. 2,000 are with cookies. And 1,500 are with Metis. Everybody is having the weapon, let me tell you that. It is not restricted to one group today. Both militant groups of both the communities are having the weapons today, and that is why this volatile situation in the state. And this is my last slide. We cannot wait and watch now. But the time has actually come to take an action. Today, the Arakan army has captured a town which is just 10 kilometers away from the Mizoram border. But do you expect the Arakan army also to get inside, because this border is not fenced? And the Assam rifles, let me tell you, if I take the example of Manipur, there are 42 battalions of Assam rifles in the Manipur. 15 battalions are looking for the border management. This border management does not have any border observation post, because Assam Rifles operates from the company operated basis. And if we require a proper surveillance in the state of Manipur, we require 470 border observation posts. We need 32 BSF battalions. The government has to ensure this, because fencing, putting the fencing is not enough. Somebody has to ensure the surveillance of the fence also. And technology is good up to a point. We saw what happened to Israel. They had the technology still, but the Hamas came in. We have to have boots on ground, and that is why I say this border issue, please don't put it under the carpet. It is extremely important. We have to energize the border management, and I'm very vocal. It's time for us to have one border, one force. You cannot have Assam Rifles somewhere, the Indian Army somewhere, the ITBP somewhere, the BSF somewhere. The entire command and control and the intelligence network is not common. And that is why the reaction time is also being compromised. And these are the dangers ahead. I'm just putting certain statistics in front of you. I'm not drawing any conclusion from these statistics. But you can see some kind of pattern which is emerging. We have to nip it. If it is in the bud now, if it has become a small flower also, it has to be nipped right now, and it is the central government which has to be very, very decisive. It is not only Manipur. There is a larger problem with Mizoram, let me tell you. Because Mizoram is not doing what the center wants it to do. And there is an influx of a large number of people from Myanmar which are coming to Mizoram, and from Mizoram they are coming to Manipur. But the NIA report has already mentioned that. Thank you very much, sir. Jen.
Thank you very much, sir. Sir, you have touched upon many aspects when we are trying to understand the conflict in Manipur, because conflict is not just about the domestic or the internal factors. So likewise, there are also several, external angles and the factors in this kind of conflict. So you have very excellently touched almost all the points, what is happening in Bangladesh and also what is happening in Myanmar and its implication in India and particularly in the state of Manipur. Thank you very much, sir, for your very insightful presentation. Now may I request Tamo Pradip Panjoba. So over to you, Tamo.
Thank you very much. And from the past two speakers, we know how complex the situation is, as well as the keynote address. But as I say, when things get too complicated, you try and break it down to bring it to the basics, and so I'll try to do that. And I will also notice it again that we are here only the Métis and others, but not the Cookies, and the fight is between the Cookies and the Métis. And I wish the Métis and Cookies can also meet like this and battle it out on the debating forums like this. And that thing, I'm quite confident will soon begin to happen, because I also know there are backtrack meetings happening, and I know of some of them. And there, the atmosphere is almost cordial. That is some mistakes, and also the mutual suspicions that people have. When those are cleared, then the fraternity begins. And also, when you tell each other of your sufferings. We heard about the air travel, and then you hear about, from the other side, you hear about having to go to Aizawl, from Imphal. Aizawl is 402 kilometers, and from there again to Silchar to Guwahati. That again is a long journey before you can actually touch an airport. No, airport is there, but not everybody can afford an air flight. But if you want to go by road, it's a long journey. So those kind of stories, when you hear from each other, and also what the conflict is bringing to both sides. And here, I think you're talking about job losses. There, people are talking about the rise in drug addiction and things like that. I mean, those kind of stories actually touch each other. That even in tragedy, you can find that commonality, and in that commonality of acknowledgement of that commonality, you can actually find that redemption together. And I'm quite confident that's going to happen soon. And also, I pray that it will happen soon, because this is not going to be good for anybody for this to carry on. So I just want to go on to what I think are the causes, some of the biggest causes of this. Of course, immediate triggers we've already heard, the ST notice from the High Court and all that. But there are also larger, deeper kind of reasons for this to explode. Because one small spark cannot cause a inferno if there was nothing to burn. And there was so much to burn, which is why it's burning now. And I think this is why we have to address this kind of problems. And also some acknowledgement of this thing called destiny. I'm not talking in terms of fate as an abstract thing, but also in real terms, that we talked about these difficulties. We're talking about these difficulties of traveling and all that. And geography itself is destiny, that we have to realize that you try to break that destiny, there's going to be trouble. Anybody who tries to break that, if it's a integral kind of geography, and I'm not just saying it, the scholars have said it. Robert Kaplan's book, The Revenge of Geography, is all about this, the different conflicts. Or Halford Mackinder's book, The Geographical Pivot of History. Even the mindset of people are different. People who live on the mountains, people who live in the valley, people who are landlocked, people who live in island, the sense of security, the sense of neighborhood, all of these are actually affected by geography. And this the thought process that geography gives you also brings a sense of inevitability of some of these unions. And you try to break that, there's going to be trouble. In fact, I have also written 2 books, and in one of them I have touched on this in what's happening in the Northeast as well as in Kashmir. Now we are talking about Kashmir as Hindu-Muslim kind of a binary, but it's not always that. There's also the water thing. You see all the rivers of the Indus Valley actually originate or go through Kashmir. So anybody who controls that. So there's a subliminal kind of fear that this is a civilizational threat. Anybody who controls this, and this I've heard from Pakistani people when we had seminars like this, that they feel a civilizational kind of threat. Kashmir going away is not just about political territory, but also is their own thing. So, and also you see every time there's this friction between India and Pakistan. There's always a talk of the Indus Water Treaty of 1960. India will say that we'll alter it, and Pakistan also makes all kinds of noise. Subliminally, there are other factors which are actually contributing and driving these conflicts, and I see that happening here in the Meitei Kuki thing as well. Geography is one of them, of course, and also the idea of history itself. And also, when you talk of history, of course, we're talking about the state. And how E.H. Carr says that the state is a story, the history is a story of state. Now, in 49 BC, Julius Caesar crossed that stream called Rubicon. Supposedly, I haven't seen that stream, but supposedly he calls it petty stream. And Julius Caesar crossed that, and the emperor of Rome said, if you cross that, that's you're rebelling against state. So the rebellion actually began from there. So 49 BC is remembered. But millions and millions of others have crossed that stream. So shepherds to cowherds to lovers to picnickers. So many people have crossed, but none of them is history. So history is actually about the state. This, I think, we have to be very clear. And the state, again, is not something constant, just as history. So history is also not something constant. It is a process. So we have to be actually acknowledging there's a process happening. So we have to readjust every now and then. This logic goes for everybody, for India, for a state, for a community, for my family. I have 2 kids. When they were 2 years, 3 years, my relation with them was different. Very cordial, but it's a different kind of relationship. I can tell them not to go out on the streets or come back early, things like that. But now they are adults. I can't do the same. So we have to keep on adjusting. And in this, in times of trouble, Ernst Renan has an essay, is there freely available on the internet, What is a Nation? And there, the most famous statement, I liked it so much also, that he makes there is, a nation is a daily plebiscite, that you have to keep readjusting. And he was saying this when the French Revolution had just happened. The aristocrats were controlling the nation. And then there were other contesting, the bourgeois were actually growing. They were the ones who were earning the money, investing in businesses, enterprises, and yet the aristocrats were having everything. So there was that revolution that happened. We all know about the French Revolution. And Renan wrote that essay in that context, that a nation is a daily plebiscite. If you want to keep the nation intact, then you do that plebiscite every now and then. I think it's time for us to also think of such a plebiscite. And this is, it has worked in, I mean, this idea has been suggested by so many people in so many other contexts. Even in the case of India, Ashish Nadi and others were saying, he has an edited book, where he was one of them. And then the title of the book is Reimagining India. Now we have this Sunil Khilnani writing idea of India, but these people are actually now saying we have to reimagine every now and then. And the reimagination process has to be contributory by everybody who has a stake in that particular nation. And that kind of thing should happen everywhere. In the case of Manipur too, I think that should happen. In the case of the Northeast, Manipur, anywhere, every now and then you have to readjust. Once upon a time, I think I will just go back into another book again. This is by James Scott. One of those very influential. He's no more. He died 2 or 3 months ago. And his book called Art of Not Being Governed, an Anarchic History of Upland Southeast Asia, which includes the Northeast. And it's quite a good picture of what is happening there in the Northeast, Manipur included, where, the state formation, he was talking about how states form, which is, again, a theory which has come about from so many other people, that you have a stable economy. And then state formation will happen because state is actually about the management of surplus. You are doing is just thinking about the next meal I'll go and hunt there, or I'll go and pick fruits from there next day. I'm just thinking about my meals on a daily basis. There's no question of state formation. But when you have a stable agriculture, actually it begins with agriculture, because agriculture is the first stable economy giving enterprise, and that actually happens. And then the state formation happens because of that. And so many other people, as I said, have said this, and in a jovial way, but a very illustrative way. You will now know Harari actually say this, that people are saying that men, sapiens, he calls it, sapiens domesticated plants to give themselves stable food stability, and that actually is the basis for its state formation. But Yuval Noah Harari puts it the other way. It is actually the crops which domesticated humans. And only recently I met some German people. They were coming to Manipur to study some. They have a project there, and I was sitting there and talking to them, and they were telling me about Africa. The same thing happening, where the people who don't have stable agriculture, people who are actually nomadic, have a larger vision of territory, and the people who have actually developed agriculture are stuck to their small land. You can't move along with your crop. You can move along with your animals and all that, but you can't move along with your crop. So you get stuck there. That's another side of the story. Just a side story. But interestingly, the modern state as we know it, because it's applicable to Manipur as well, which is why I'm saying it. The modern state as we know it is actually premised on a stable and innumerable population. You just keep moving here and there, then you can't have your elections, you can't have anything that's that determines who should come to power, those kind of things. So modern state is premised on a stable population, on a sedentary population, on an innumerable population. You have to have an identity card and all that. But if you are always on the move, that's difficult to actually accommodate within the modern state. That again is a problem. And here again, I just referred to another book by this Anthony Sutton. He's got a book called Nomads, the Wanderers Who Shaped Our World. And there he gives, he's talking about fables from different cultures, different parts of the world. And then he comes to, and one thing is actually quite striking. When he's talking about this, Seth and Orpheus from Egypt, and then Odysseus from Greece and everything. But one is a simple one example, which I think should be familiar to everybody, is the first murder in the Bible. Cain killing Abel. Cain is the elder brother, and Abel is the younger brother. The elder brother actually kills Abel. The elder brother kills the younger brother, and both are children of Adam and Eve. So this is the first murder in the Bible. And the further discipline is Cain is a tiller of soil, and Abel is a herder, wandering herder. So this conflict between the settled and the moving population has always been there. And I'm not trying to pass any judgment, but then the modern state is premised on the sedentary population. So I think somehow we have to agree that we have to settle it one place, and you just can't move around anywhere. You just can't, and also the idea of the eminent domain. Because if you want a state, these things have to go. Modern state has to have these qualities, that the eminent domain is that all land belongs to the state first, and then everybody else gets their pieces of land. If that is not agreed upon, the state does not have any value. And I've been reading quite a bit on the problems of the United States, United Nations. And here again, this problem was faced when they had a multiplication of new nations in Africa after decolonization, as well as the balkanization of the Eastern Europe. So much come about, and then your territory is not very well established, and the moving population is also there. So they had real big problem in deciding what kind of powers to give to everybody. Of course, there are so many different problems regarding the UN as such, but I won't go too deep into that. But these are some of the things, the primary things that I want to talk about. And also now coming to the idea of conflict, what a conflict is, which the earlier speakers also touched. I just want to also just list some of them, which is available on the scholarship list, in scholarship in different fields, including international relations. And I'm familiar with international relations now because my younger daughter is actually doing that. So I keep reading her course material and all that. So I think I just missed out one point from that state formation thing, James Scott thing, and which is applicable to the Northeast, the part which is applicable to the Northeast. So you have the state formation happen in the valleys because of the stable agriculture came about. And in the hills, he said the non-state population was just moving around, or Sweden agriculture, small thing, village republics and all that. You don't get that centralized kind of bureaucracy because you don't have that kind of economy. And also when the actual states came in, for instance, when the British came in, they started dealing with the states only because they didn't know how to deal with the rest. You know, in the case of, for instance, the Naga Hills, you go and have an agreement with Konoma. Next village will agree to that. So you'll have to deal with every village in their own ways. And that became pointless for them. So they just left them as unadministered territory. First, they got in 1919, the Government of India Act, they were the excluded area. And then in Government of India Act 1935, part of them became partially excluded area. And some of them still remain as excluded area. And that also, you can't just blame them because they don't know how to deal with this. They don't want to actually spend their resources dealing with something they don't understand. That's what happened, and that's what they left. And in fact, when they were leaving in 1938, another British officer, Robert Reid, he actually came out with a note, 22-page note, which is there in David Simley's book, 4 British plans for the Northeast India. Building an empire on the edge, or something. But anyway, four British plans for the Northeast, and Robert Reid's plan is the most well known, and it also came to be called wrongly as the Copeland plan and all that. And there it was actually they were actually trying to make much of the hill region of the Northeast and Burma into a crown colony. When Burma and India became independent, these were supposed to remain as a crown colony because they said these were not Indians or Burmese. They have to be there. And the capital, they were going to decide, and J.P. Mill, another officer, his suggestion was that Imphal should be the capital of that crown colony. And I'm glad it didn't happen because, you would have an ungovernable. As it is, even Manipur, a small state, is finding it difficult to manage with the few, it's not few, about 34 different communities, small communities. But if we had that thing, we'll have about 200 different communities. Okay, you can imagine what would have happened with that thing. And also they actually recognize this, that it will be ungovernable, so we won't have it. So that they didn't do it, and thankfully they didn't do it. But I just want to extend this a little more. But the mindset that the British had of the Northeast, thinking that these are different, was not. I'm just ending in 2 minutes.
Yeah, sir.
I just referred to one article by Ashok Mitra. He's also no more. He's CBM ideologue. He used to write a column for the Telegraph. I still remember the name of the article because I was writing my book at the time. 2013 it came out. It's called A Dose of Heresy. He was saying that a dose of heresy. And in that article, the basic point that he makes is, in 1937, Burma was separated from India. Burma was part of India, and in 1937, British India. And British actually separated Burma in 1937. That was when the Indian freedom struggle was peaking. And he was saying that if at that time Northeast was also separated from India, they would not have been squeak, as there was no squeak against the separation of Burma from India. So that kind of mindset was there at the time. And a bit of that hangover is still here now, which is why Manipur has been in trouble for almost 2 years, and there's no squeak in the rest of India. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Tamo, for your very insightful analysis of the conflict in Manipur, especially the politics of ethnicity in the state of Manipur, where geography and the governance played a very important role. So it was a very insightful talk and presentation. Now I will request Dr. Appam. So, sir, please come in. So, Appam is from Jamia Millia Islamia and originally from the Ukhrul district of Manipur. Over to you, sir.
Okay, good evening, and thank you, the organizers. I thank the organizers for giving me this. Yeah, is that okay? No. Yeah. So I thank the organizers for giving me this opportunity. I think I did not go and look back to the backgrounds and introduction, because I think the three previous speakers have done my introduction, how it started and where it started and how it is linked. But I just want to, it's in a form of reiteration, because the topic says Northeast, and then also Manipur, the way forward. And so as a Northeast, for many of us, I think Northeast is not just a very important strategic geographical area, but it's a huge buffer zone. Just like Tibet, for example. Even if India invades China, then even if we win, the entire Tibet will still have much time to reach China, because the real China, you see. So that is also one thing there. It is also a place where the people of this place have to really assert their Indianness, for many of us, because nobody doubts, nobody doubts South Indianness or Marathas or Punjabis, but we really have to assert, every day that we are Indians. That is also one thing. So it's not just geographically, connected by that chicken neck, but it is also, in fact, emotionally, in fact, or psychologically connected by a little less than the chicken neck, So this is where I want to just start my presentation, because to be Northeast, it costs us a lot, our dignity, our emotions, And in the process of this, these things happen, this conflict happen. So what exactly is this conflict? It has visible hands, invisible hands. But I think it also has, it is also in fact a reflection of the clash of worldviews. I've been telling that because within ourselves there's different worldviews. Now, when Tamo Radeep talk about hills and valley, bringing in different books and text. How many years does it take for a hillman to qualify to be a plain man? Have you ever thought of that? Or how many years does it take for a plain man to qualify himself as a hillman? Well, my experience in Ukhrul is that it doesn't take more than 10 years or 15 years, for a Meitei to become tribal, right? But I don't know. Having said that, how is a community defined as a plain and as a hillman? Because if we go to Kangpokpi, Saikul, Churachandpur, More, all these are plains, but inhabited by hills. That is also something that hillmen, that is also something that we need to look at. And also because I remember, so the clash that is going on is also in fact, it also shows us how diverse Manipur is. If you remember the Karan Thapar's interview with, I think the president of the KNO, the IRS, the ex-IRS, Hang Singh. And then Karan Thapar put forward this question, the notice by the Kuki in me, that it's harsh, it's very harsh, don't you think it's very harsh, the notice said, put up by the Kuki in me. And so Mr. Hang Singh said, yeah, that's the nature of our society, that it has to be harsh, So here it is, and and also then we also have some personalities in Manipur, like MLAs, for example, some MLAs, who is the owner, not the chief, but the chief of 7 or 8 villages, which is not heard of in Meitei society. I have, forgive my ignorance, but I have never seen Meitei selling, buying this land and the next year selling this land, that land, and becoming a magnate, Or for that matter, Tangkuls. I have never seen a Tangkul or a Naga, chief of 5, 6, 2, 3 villages. That's the difference. This is not to assume that Meiteis were right, Nagas were wrong, or Kuis were wrong. So this is where it is, in fact, that we are facing with. But I want to look at an article of mine published long back, that is 2017, when Tamo Pradeep was the editor of Infal Free Press. This is an extension, not that, an extension of that essay, that article. It may sound a little scandalous now. It's because it also, I had titled this book, this article, as Politics of Integrity, Politics of State Integrity and the Narrative of Shared History, where I was questioning about what exactly is the idea behind, Manipur's integrity, fighting for Manipur's integrity, and also what exactly is that shared history that we talk about, right? But and then I assume, and I firmly believe that because now it's on, we are already almost, in fact, broken, not physically, not geographically, not constitutionally, but emotionally, right? So then, what does it take to sustain a state or a people's integrity? Obviously, inclusive development in politics, and so psychology and emotions. So these are some of the few things I have mentioned. Just to not get warning from Tamo Amarjit, I'll go ahead with the path forward to Manipur, a call for introspection and reconciliation. That is what I have titled, right? So the challenges confronting Manipur demands not only pragmatic solutions, but also a profound collective introspection that transcends communal biases and historical silences. The following points outline a framework for addressing the deep-seated issues blocking the state. I must seek your forgiveness because I expect that all the audience will be from Meitei side, and therefore, so I am now, I am now indicting or pledging, bleeding you. Okay, if I have a cookie audience, then I would be definitely charging them about their ideas also. So re-evaluating history with integrity. That's number one. The past must be revisited, not merely as a vantage point for assessing shared experiences among the communities, but as a means to confront the suppressed historics of marginalized groups. By here, I'm talking about Nagas. It is imperative to move beyond simplifying Manipur's history into the grand narrative of Meitei's glory or history. As such, an approach imposes the burden of one community's history upon others. A meaningful historical reckoning necessitates the inclusion of what has been deliberately excluded or silenced. This requires acknowledging the effects of systemic erasure and engaging with the diverse and often painful experiences of the tribal communities. And this is, of course, linked with what Tamo, Pradeep was talking about, the everyday plebiscite, and also challenging communal insularity. The communities of Manipur must transcend the pervasive atmosphere of suspicion, mistrust, and insularity that continues to define inter-group relations. It is imperative for all communities to move beyond the entrenched practice of viewing the state solely through the lens of their own communal comfort zone. Such parochial perspectives only deepen the divides and perpetuate the cycle of alienation. A genuine and collective re-examination of the very idea of Manipur is essential. What does it truly mean to be a Manipuri for a Naga, Meitei, Paite, or Kuki? What shared identity, if any, binds these diverse groups together within the socio-political framework of the state? This scrutiny must engage deeply with difficult and often uncomfortable question. What are the costs of asserting one's identity as a Naga, Meitei, Kuki, or Kuki in the context of Manipur's history and current realities? What sacrifices, exclusion, and privileges are inherent in these identities? Furthermore, it is crucial to confront not only what it takes to be a Manipuri as a member of these communities, but also to examine the uncomfortable truth that accompanies such identities. What does it mean to live as a Naga, as a Kuki, and as a Meitei while grappling with the broader Manipuri identity? How do historical grievances, systemic inequalities, and social cultural hierarchies shape these lived experiences? Answering these questions requires honesty
honesty, courage, and an unwavering commitment to truth and Manipur and the idea of Manipur. By scrutinizing these fundamental aspects with one openness and sincerity, the communities of Manipur can begin to dismantle the barrier that divides them. Only through such an inclusive and emphatic process can the foundation for genuine unity and reconciliation be laid, fostering a future where the concept of Manipur encompasses and respects the diverse reality of all its people. I know the next one will be a surprise for you, but I have come specifically for this, addressing the legacy of untouchability. It was 2003 when a few of us, I think Tamur Amarjit was there, and we were talking about Manipuri history, intellectual history, and nowhere have I found that history where we looked inward. So the past practice of Mange or Mangba, untouchability, remain a deep scar on the social fabric of Manipur. For most of you, you may not feel it, but as the tribals comes out of their village, and as they acquire more and more nuances from the universities, this is bound to happen now. The question of why were we discriminated? What was the cost of being discriminated? Is in fact inevitable. So, leaving an indelible mark of pain, humiliation, and a trauma on tribal communities, this dehumanizing practice was not merely an act of social exclusion. It was a calculated assault on the dignity and identity of an entire people. The tribal communities were forced to endure an existence stripped of honor, constantly reminded of their supposed inferiority, not because of any fault of their own, but because a dominant section of society deemed it so. I'm urging you, the Métis intelligentsia in particular must confront this historical reality with courage and introspection, asking themselves what kind of inhumanity and cruelty accompanied this system of untouchability. What moral blindness allowed such practices to persist? This shameful legacy is not just the burden of those who directly perpetuate it, but of all those who remain silent in its face. It is a stain on the collective conscience of the people of history in Manipur, a state that prides itself on its rich cultural heritage and historical depth. The consequences of this practice were devastating. By denying dignity to tribal community, the state effectively denied their humanity. The persistent ostracization and demonization of their culture eroded their sense of self-worth and belonging. The cultural practice, language, and tradition of the tribals were not only dismissed, but actively vilified, as though their very existence was an affront. This systemic exclusion served as a tool of cultural annihilation, forcing entire communities into a state of ignominy and undignified existence. The pain and trauma caused by untouchability, practice of untouchability, extends far beyond the individuals who directly suffered under its weight. It has fractured the social cohesion of Manipur, embedding mistrust, resentment, and alienation that persists to this day. For the state to move forward, this painful chapter must be acknowledged in its entirety. Only by confronting the truth of this historical injustice can the wounds begin to heal, allowing for a future rooted in dignity, equality, and mutual respect for all its people. Confronting inequality in representation and development. The glaring disparities in political representation, economic development, and access to resources must be addressed with utmost urgency. Distribution of development will come later.
But once we assert ourselves, once we, come to that realization and understanding that we cannot live apart, I think that has to come first. And once that is in fact resolved, the question for Manipur is no more, can we live as one? It's no more, that is not the question. The question is, can we not live as one? Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, sir, for your very insightful presentation. So without wasting much time, I will request Dr. Noni.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, organizers, and also thank you, Mr. Chair. I think much has been said on the issues in Northeast India and Manipur violence. I'm very delighted to hear from our friend A.C. Yapam on the issues confronting within the idea of Manipur. Now, let me come back to a couple of issues that has been flagged off in today's debate and discussion. I would begin by saying that since after the independence of India in 1947, I've heard the MPs from Manipur speaking in the parliament, "Humko pehchaniye, humko chaniye." Please know us. This is the fundamental problem. Even after 76 years of India's independence, MPs from Northeast India will have to stand in the parliament and seek for recognition. That's one aspect of the solidarity that the people of the Northeast have, and that is also one barrier that the people of the Northeast have. That is one premise I want to put forth today. The second premise is that the state, the institutions are losing its legitimacy increasingly in the state of Manipur and also the Northeast. Why? Because of the perception of politics. If you look at the media report, if you look at the interpretation of the text of the High Court judgment on the ST issue, if you look at the event of drone bombing or the rocket bombing in Moirang, if you look at the reports, these reports are actually perplexing, and it is increasing the problem. It is increasing the binaries. It is increasing the barrier in the Northeast because there is a perception politics implicated in these narratives of media and the narrative of intel agencies. The Indian Army Chief would say something, and the NIA submission would say something. Now, these are fundamental questions of perception politics. And I think the Northeast has this fundamental barrier that everyone will have to acknowledge. Coming back to this politics of perception and the problem of perception politics, in 1950s and 40s, the Northeast people were considered to be having racial prejudice against India. And they were defined as people not to be trusted so much, in the words of Patel. Now the question is, isn't this a real barrier that had existed at some point of history? The question is whether these prejudices still continue. These are fundamental questions that we want to raise in Delhi. And the idea of speaking here in Delhi basically is to raise these fundamental problems of perception politics. And the merger and the integration of states in India's Northeast basically had this trajectory of perception problem politics. The takeover of Manipur by the government of India had the implication of that perception because the elected government of that time was not consulted. And now that historical event, which the government of India defined as takeover of Manipur, continued to traumatize people, for there was a lack of justice in the process of integration and making of a country. Therefore, I think the idea of geography, the idea of being in a borderland is more of perception than of reality. Why? Because these areas were increasingly frontierized in the cartography of colonialism, the British colonialism, and also in the post-colonial cartographic ideas, and even the policy perceptions. And if you look at the narratives that were circulating during the time of the merger of states in India, particularly in the frontiers of the Northeast, you can evidently see that these perceptions were playing a very, very important role in denying a democratic making of a country. Therefore, I think Northeast as a region has not only be a geographical point or space, but also a space for politics of perception that has let these borders becoming increasingly frontierized in the idea policy perceptions. And therefore, in 1958, when there wasn't any significant insurgency problem in Manipur, particularly in the valley and even in the hill areas, the Armed Forces Special Powers Act were imagined to be implemented as a preemptive institution, preemptive apparatus to deal with what you call today borderland. So therefore, my contention is that borderland is not only a geographical space, but it is a space of perception. And this is the fundamental problem. And the continued problem in Manipur or in the Northeast is basically because of this continued perception. And therefore, you can see the absence of state, the ineffectivity of the state to regain the ground of normalcy. Why the people continue to still stay in the relief camps for 19 months? Why the armed miscreants continue to trespass into the civilian spaces is perhaps because the state doesn't have a vision, in fact, to restore normalcy and protect the lives and property of the citizens. Now, who will be accountable for these killings of civilians, hostage taking? If the state is not going to make these culprits accountable for their acts, what is the significance of being in a modern state? These are fundamental questions that we have been grappling with. Instead of having what our justice had said, 60,000 people, boots on the ground, I think these boots are not grounded. That's a fundamental problem. So I think even if you have boots, the boots have to be grounded. And these are legitimate claims of a citizen. Let's talk about Jomia. I don't agree with this thesis of Jomia. And I have written on this in my social media postings. This entire idea of Jomia that divides hill and valley in complete binary is the wrong foundation to understand the other aspects of interconnectivity and interfaces with the hill and the valley. The Jomia project had actually empowered ethno-political entrepreneurs, in the words of Brubaker, that these ethno-political entrepreneurs are using these binaries as hard boundaries. Now let me come back to this generic of cookie and identity politics. Do you think this cookie as a generic identity unified and homogeneous? This is not. Do you think this identity politics that you keep on talking about as one entity, it has its own variety of differences, interesting cultural pluralism within, because there are sub-micro small tribes, which is just about 600 or 1,000 people. And they're clamoring for their autonomy, their cultural continuity, their folk continuity, their habitation continuity. They don't want to be clubbed within these generics of identity politics, because that hampers their mutuality and their historical existence. You have to understand, when we talk about the generic identity, when you report about the generic identity, you must kindly look into the narratives coming from the ground, how the smaller communities are saying, please do not drag us into this generic politics of identity, because that is hampering our freedom and autonomy. And they will probably never get represented in that liberal frame of representation because they don't have the number. Therefore, Manipur is a very interesting state with a very old connections among people in terms of culture, in terms of oral traditions, in terms of religious practices. But at the same time, the division of people had also happened since the days of colonial times. If we talk about untouchability as a big problem, I've worked on these issues in my PhD. I call it the coming of Hinduism led to casteization of Manipuri society. I repeat, casteization of Manipuri society. These division of people on caste lines basically is a remnant of that casteization of Manipuri society. But you also have to recognize the struggle of the Manipuri people led by Hizamera Bhut, who was fighting for these people that Manipur be made a secular state. In 1934, he founded an organization called Hindu Manipuri Mahasabha, but he realized that that was not a secular politics, that was not a secular nomenclature. Therefore, in 1930, he dropped this word called Hindu because he wanted to make Manipur a secular state, secular society. We have had stories of struggle against casteization of Manipuri society, if not casteism. But the remnants of this continue to be haunting us. And I agree with Appam that there are trauma, there are legitimate concerns of people who had faced this problem. And we have to acknowledge that. Having said this, the Métis themselves had to flee the center of the city state called Manipur because they were also casteized. The Lois, in fact, the Andros, the Kachings, the Segmai, they had this tragedy of casteization. So I think it was not only the hill people who had this problem, the valley people themselves had this problem because they did not acknowledge the casteization of Manipuri society. So these are fundamental answers and questions that we have to deal with, and today's gathering is important because to clarify and decode the perception politics and the problem of the perception politics. Unless you emerge out of these bondage of perception politics, the reality is still going to be very far away from our consciousness. And coming back to the ethnopolitical entrepreneurs, why the violence continues in Manipur? Because there are ethnopolitical entrepreneurs who would like to end the space, what we call overlapping spaces. Do you think Churachandpur is only for the Kukis? No, there were Naga sub-tribes initially. Now the Métis are no more there. In More subdivision, all the communities were there. The Nagas are no more, the Tangkus particularly, and the Métis are no more. Of course, in the valley of Manipur, in Imphal Valley, you don't have Kukis today. But one fundamental question is, will the Kuki ethno-political leaders allow Métis and the Nagas to go back to their original places where they used to stay? I really doubt. But you ask the same question to the valley people, I'm sure they will accept coming back of the displaced people. And that is the hope we have. Because Manipur Valley is not only for Métis, that you're completely wrong. Because 60% of state's population is settled in the valley, and the Hindu Métis population, according to 2021 to 11 census, is 44%. So, national media would say Métis population is 53%. Not segregating Métis Pangal from that data. I think there is a problem of perception politics. And violence, these ethno-political leaders, I have written extensively on these ideas that the ethno-political entrepreneurs are actually playing these invisible hands. And I think they are no more invisible because they want to end these overlapping spaces. When you end these overlapping spaces in the state of Manipur, which is inhabited by 35 officially recognized communities, some of which only have 600 to 1,000 population, their existence is under threat. If we allow to end these overlapping spaces, you only end up increasing the demand for ethnocentric political spaces. And that is very dangerous. You are setting a very, very dangerous precedent by favoring ethnocentric homeland options, because the Constitution doesn't really, the Constitution of the country doesn't really, acknowledge the possibility of ethnocentric homelands. If you look at the SRC report of 1956, it was clearly stated that there can be no one language, one state formula. The culture cannot be a foundation always for a state creation. I think the debate that has come into play after the May 3rd basically has got a lot of perception problem, because the binary that you claim to see is actually not so hard, because there are other solidarities that work in the region. The class, for example, the class question, the issues of the poor people, the farmers. Do you think they have a project in their mind to create ethnic homelands? Not really. So now, when we say ethno-political entrepreneurship of glamorizing violence, you've heard a lot of leaders talking about and saying that the violence must continue. If the violence is not going to be there, your ethno-political project will fail. That's very unfortunate to encourage. You have democratic mechanisms, you have democratic options to do a movement, but you try to continue this civil conflict. Just for the reason that you want to enhance your ethno-political objectives. That's really unfair, I guess. So coming back to the other side, I want to say a couple of things. I think Manipur state should not be equated with Meitei state. That's again a very wrong perception, I guess. Let me come back to some historical facts. 1947 to 1949, I define it as a glorious moment of Manipur's history, because that time, when the Constitution of Manipur was written before India's Constitution, the Constituent Assembly was participated by almost all the tribes, including the Meitei Pangals. And the first government of the time, elected in 1948, was constituted by almost all the communities, and it had tribal ministers. So there was a moment of reconciliation. If you talk about reconciliation today, that process was already happening in those days. But that proved to be a very short-lived process. And after that, you could see militarization of the region. You could see the Chinese aggression coming. You could see the rise of junta in 1962 in Myanmar. You see the division of Pakistan again, the East Pakistan and the West Pakistan, creation of Bangladesh. In 1988, you had another problem in Myanmar, which led to a lot of displacement. And in 2021, you had another military coup. See, these regional developments, these regional political developments had actually played a lot of role in destabilizing the states in the Northeast India. The Assamese nationalist project, for instance, against the foreigners, or if you come to Manipur, the increasing threat perception being felt, being overshadowed by outsiders. These are some empirical issues that we have been grappling with. But one question is that, can the modern state afford to allow the incessant movement of population across the borders in the name of culture? Can the modern state accommodate them? Do you have a mechanism in the modern state system to accommodate this free-flowing movement of population, not only for cultural solidarities, but also for territorial solidarity? That's a problem, I think. I think the modern states normally do not have any such mechanism to deal with these continued territorial trespassing of identities, because modern state is basically based on fixated territoriality and sovereignty. What is happening in Northeast India is basically the porousness of these fixated ideas of state. The only problem I see is I don't see any problem in cultural...
Sir, 2 minutes.
Okay. I don't see any problem in cultural transition of people across the border. But I see a problem in the continual recoiling and reconsolidation of identities for ethnocentric homelands. That's, of course, going to create a conflict with overlapping spaces like Manipur, which is a multicultural state. Having said this, I think our problem is very, very complex. I want to say that this weaponization of identity is not good, because the micro-identities are increasingly feeling threatened, and that part must be acknowledged. And the media or the academic exercises must not get trapped into the binaries that you believe, because the binaries are not so strong in some sense, because there are other aspects of our social world, and we must also acknowledge the resources that can bound people, not divide people. I also appreciate the idea that institutions needs to be democratized. I also appreciate the idea that there should be fair development and redistribution of resources, and there should be reimagination of the idea of states, or Manipur, for instance. I think the way forward is basically to get rid of this perception politics. Number one, that frontierize people, that put people into binaries without acknowledging the other aspects of the social world where there are strong solidarities. The other suggestion that I want to make is, as Justice Mridul had already said, that you must allow IDPs to return home because that's their fundamental right. You cannot give them a comfortable life in the relief camps. And if you have that perception, that is highly violation of our fundamental rights. Coming back to the end point of my presentation, we have also seen this problem of buffering people, which has become, I call it buffering people because I feel like speaking on these concepts because, when the Manipur government was informed that the hill will be controlled by the Ministry of Home Affairs and the valley will be controlled by the chief minister, that was kind of reminding us the historical, segregation and buffering of people. For instance, I'm ending, I'll spend one more minute. But if you talk about Copland Plan of 1941, the whole idea of creating a crown colony in the Indo-Myanmar region was basically to create a buffer zone so that they can counter the expansion, the rise of the Chinese and the Burmese and other global powers. Therefore, I think this entire idea of buffering of people is actually now rejuvenated in some sense when you see the idea of Christian state being flown up, and when you see the hill and the valley, particularly in the context of Métis and Kuki, being drawn an abstract line which is almost becoming like a buffer. That is actually very, very unbecoming on the part of the state because the state citizens cannot be buffered in that manner. That is actually a violation of their fundamental right to free movement, and the state should ensure that citizens move freely in their own state. The last point that I want to say is that Manipur is a very, very interesting state because it had a very good advanced history of state making and gradually a politics of congregating people of different ethnic groups. And this historicity continues to play a very important political resource. I mean, it's a good political resource that people often celebrate, and I endorse that. I think that resource of being lived together at some significant moment of history can be recalled, and that can be an inspiration for us to say that we can live together. And no ethno-political entrepreneurs should be allowed to actually end our overlapping spaces where different communities live together. And it is unfair on the part of any politics of perception that actually gets trapped in this whole idea of Eurozizing binaries as absolute. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Noni, for your very insightful presentation and your the role of ethno-political leaders or entrepreneurs. So we will discuss that at the later stage. So I will request Dr. Sampa Kundu. So please.
It's okay, I think I can start the presentation. So, I will be talking about how we can address the cross-border challenges, and I will be focusing on Northeast India here in this case. I will be focusing on Manipur. So basically I will take some of my cues from Major General Kocher because he already spoke about how the political developments, the recent political developments in Myanmar and Bangladesh, how they had its impact and how they are still impacting our Northeast India, the security situation. So I will not be talking about Bangladesh because that is not my forte. That I particularly work on Myanmar. So I will be focusing on Myanmar, the domestic political situation inside Myanmar, and how it is impacting Northeast India and its security situation. So to begin with, let me start with the historic and strategic ties that we have between India and Myanmar. And we all remember our former defense minister, V.K. Krishna Menon. I'm sure you all remember, we all remember him. And once he said, and that is the year 1953, when he said, what hurt Burma would hurt India because of links of friendship, geography, and history between the two countries. I think this one statement is enough to make you realize how the history and geography of these two countries are interconnected to each other. Look at the geography of India and Myanmar. He already showed us the map, so I'm not showing it anyway, it's not working. So the geography of these two countries are, interconnected to each other. So if we talk about the border regions, it's long porous border, and we cannot ignore that fact. And then obviously, if we come to the modern geopolitical situation, India and Myanmar are kind of inseparable in the sense that they share common platforms in various multilateral regional forums. And we name it like ASEAN, we have BIMSTEC, we have BCIM, IORA also. So these are some of the geopolitical, entities where both India and Myanmar share common platforms. And these platforms are not only platforms for discussion or negotiation, but they offer you, additional avenues to engage with each other. So if India has a problem, India has this additional avenue of BIMSTEC or IORA or ASEAN to talk about it and resolve it. And the vice versa goes for Myanmar and other ASEAN and other Southeast Asian countries, right? Then I talk about India's Act East policy and India's approach for Indo-Pacific. Indo-Pacific is the buzzword, geostrategic buzzword now. Every one of us is talking about Indo-Pacific, and we all understand why Indo-Pacific is important. Obviously, India wants to have its own footprint in the entire Indo-Pacific. And when we say Indo-Pacific, it's not only about Southeast Asia. Southeast Asia is at the main or central point of Indo-Pacific, but the geography of Indo-Pacific actually spans from Africa, and it goes till Australia, New Zealand, Fiji, and other Pacific island countries. So if you look at the vast geography of Indo-Pacific, Myanmar and other Southeast Asian countries, they are exactly at the center of it. So India is not in a situation, I would say, to ignore the geopolitical instability that happens within Myanmar. And domestically also, we have felt the impact of it. Then with Myanmar, we have the bilateral trade, border trade. We are all aware of it. Security concerns, all of the speakers, they have already spoken about it, so I'm not going to speak about it. Then we have connectivity. On connectivity, I will be talking a little bit. I'm not going to talk about the security concerns because Major General Kochhar, he had already spoken about it. The Three Brotherhood Alliance, Arakan Army, Tang National Army, and then MNDAA. He had already spoken about how these security concerns are actually impacting the northeastern security. So let me come straight to the point of the impact. So the first thing that we felt here was in February 2024 when the free movement regime, FMR with Myanmar was scrapped for a particular time period by the government of India, and that decision was actually aimed at bolstering India's internal security and preserving the demographic structure of the northeastern states. So this cancellation of FMR came shortly after India announced its intention to construct a fence along with the 1,643 kilometer of long porous India-Myanmar border. So this reflected that how deeply concerned New Delhi was for the, the domestic political situation inside Myanmar. Now let me come to the projects, the connectivity projects that I already mentioned about it. So the Kaladan Multimodal Transit and Transport Project and India-Myanmar-Thailand Trilateral Highway, I'm sure all of you know about it. But let me just give you a few glimpses of these projects. These projects are not only geopolitically beneficial for Northeast India or India, this will be India's connecting point with entire Southeast Asia, and through Southeast Asia, India can actually connect with the other Asian countries. We all know about China, China's BRI projects, how China is indebting other countries, etc., etc. We heard about CMEC, we heard about CPEC. So how India can counterbalance it? And when I'm using the word counterbalancing, I am using it consciously because many people would say that India doesn't want to counterbalance. But if you look, at the statements, official statements released by the government of India, their officials, the ministers, etc., you can actually find the subtle meaning of it. So even if we are not saying it outspokenly that we want to counterbalance, but that concern is deeply inside our mind. So we have to accept and admit it. Having said that, these projects are delayed. Why they are delayed? There are many reasons to explain. Some say that there is bureaucratic, lack of willpower. Some will say that there are situations which did not encourage us to complete the projects. But in the recent years, these projects were delayed, particularly because of the political situation, the political instability inside Myanmar, especially after the last coup that happened in February 2021. When most of the projects is complete inside India, most of the project is complete inside Thailand, Myanmar is the only bottleneck that we still have. Refugee influx, I'm going to, not touch here because we have already heard about it. We have heard how multidimensional and how complicated these problems are. So last but not the least point that I thought I would be talking about a little bit is the drug trade, the illegal drug trade that we have because of the political instability inside Myanmar. And this is not a new problem, this is not a new phenomenon. We have this for last few decades, we all know about the Golden Triangle and all. But what is happening is, after this coup, 2021, each and every party, be it the military junta, be it any of these, ethnic armed organization, all of them are somehow engaged with some or the other transnational criminal activities. So it can be drug trade, it can be illegal, human trafficking, it can be illegally like refugee influx, it can be any kind of maritime security, traditional and non-traditional security issues that we are aware of. It can be IU, it can be anything. But when we are talking about these problems, all these problems are going to impact the regional security architecture in the Bay of Bengal region and also the Indo-Pacific region that I just mentioned about. So India is particularly concerned about these problems. And as we all know that if there is one problem in our neighborhood, this is going to impact each one of us. So in South Asia, we have so many problematic states and we all know about it. We have, so many states that are fragile, that are vulnerable to economic downtown, that are vulnerable to political insecurity and so many other problems. So the emergence of Myanmar as a rogue state, as a rough state, as a root state, whatever you want to term it, will be dangerous for our security situation and we need to be concerned about it. So yes, I agree that the ethnic, political, ethnic, social dimensions within Manipur has its own history and we have to study about it. But then if at the current geopolitical situation we need to address these problems, we need to address it from the contemporary point of view. And for that I have a three-pronged approach or three-pronged agenda. First is bilateral, second is regional, and the third one is multilateral. So what India can offer at the bilateral level to Myanmar, and here we can talk about the capacity building programs. Like government of India has already initiated so many capacity building programs for Myanmar. It can be for the youth, it can be for the women, it can be for the entrepreneurs, it can be for the university students, and so on and so forth. Then at the regional level, I would like to talk about ASEAN for 1 minute here. Yes, we all agree that ASEAN is not successful in addressing the core problem within Myanmar. But ASEAN has its own way. We call it ASEAN way. And the main agenda of ASEAN is ASEAN cannot, ASEAN believes that as the regional organization of Southeast Asia, it has to be at the center of anything that happens inside Southeast Asia, especially for the geopolitical security reasons. So we have to, support ASEAN whichever way ASEAN takes, because India is also India like shares multilateral and bilateral platforms within ASEAN, with ASEAN. It's okay. And the third thing is multilateral. So multilateral, I would be referring to the United Nations and other multilateral organizations like IORA, BCIM. I already spoke about. BIMSTEC is another sub-regional grouping that we have in this region. So all these things together, if they can come, together and try to bring a solution to the domestic political insecurity situation inside Myanmar, I'm sure that will help India in some way or the other to have some kind of stability inside Northeast India, including Manipur. So with that, I will be concluding my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Sampakundu. So you have added, new ideas and thinking when we talk about the current situation in Manipur. So now I will now request Mr. Anil. He is the Secretary General MCCI. Over to you, sir.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much, sir. Actually, I have requested the organizer to delete my parent organization MCCI, because I'm being represented here as an individual self, not at the level of the organization. I'm very sorry to say that. First of all, I'd like to thank the organizer for having me in this beautiful and wonderful, panel discussion. Thank you so much. I'll be focusing on the geoeconomics, geopolitics, and the present situation of Manipur, and finally the way forward, as everyone is expecting the way forwards for the Manipur. It was 10th of May, if I recall correctly. My friend from Delhi called me up like, how is your Manipur? So I was, reluctant to answer, in what way should I answer, how is Manipur? I was just saying that, Manipur is once a princely state, joined to the Union of India some 73 years back, and we have a very happy life with a pluralistic society, with a good idea of Manipur, and every community in the Manipur were enjoying like anything. But it was that day that Manipur became in the map of violence, in the global map of violence, which is a very, very unfortunate for all of us. See, I myself is a background from the business. I run a business in Imphal, and that's the General Secretary, is the Chamber of Commerce that I'm working on. So I have listened to every TV discussions, TV news, and every reading, following the newspaper every day. What was the cause of the violence that suddenly come out on the 3rd of May? And people are doing, too much focus on the signs and symptoms about what is happening in the state. So I started to think what was the cause beyond that signs and symptoms? So I started to follow all those things. So let me talk somewhere around from the historical background of post-colonial to the post-Cold War till the present. So I would say that British has left us a legacy of conflict among the regional states. Why I'm saying this? Because we need to see the issues of Manipur from the global perspectives, from the filtering down to regional perspective, and filtering down to the level of community level. So it was in the year 1860 something like that when the British cartographers went through the lines of the oxide chains and made.
Yet various socio-political issues in our contemporary era, contemporary times, seems to have need of colonial endeavors.
I was suggesting something in Infal with Dr. Deban to have a JPC.
Is written down. Thank you.
Are there any talks currently that are ongoing?
That I'm not aware, but how would you suggest this can happen?
So that we are speculating. The only thing we can be certain about is that there are IDPs, and the IDPs are approximately 60,000 in number, and they belong to both communities, and they've been displaced from where they originally lived and eked out their livelihood. I beseech everybody gathered here, including the powers that be, that if the IDPs can be returned home, and it has nothing to do with extreme organizations on either side of the fence. The IDPs must return home, they must be secure in their homes, and they must be secure in their livelihoods. I think if we are able to do that, regardless of the external problems that the nation may have, at least Manipur would, in my view, limp back to normalcy.
Sir, one more little follow-up question regarding that.
Yeah, we'll come back to you.
Yeah.
Sir, our sir will.
Hello.
One aspect for the Hindustan Times correspondents also raised this issue. We need to understand that the trust is the most important to normalize the situation. And when the trust is not there, there will be on all kinds of forces. You can call them internal, you can call them external, to increase the divide. So after I've listened to everybody here, and everybody agrees that there should be peace there, peace in Manipur. Everybody agrees to that. How this peace is to be brought about is the big question. And that is why we all are here today to find a method to bring about this peace. And I think, first of all, very important, because there are a large number of people who have come from Myanmar into Manipur, who really don't belong to be there. Very important to identify these elements, and it is the community itself we should take on the responsibility to identify the militants from the normal people. Because unless we do that, it is the responsibility of the community. Because unless we do that, we are creating buffer zones within our own state. That cannot happen. A buffer zone is created between two countries which are at war to prevent that war from escalating. Golan Heights, Syria, there was a buffer zone. Lebanon, Blue Line, there was a buffer zone. Ladakh border with China, there is a buffer zone. How can you have a buffer zone within your own state and restrict the movement of your people from one place to another? That is the larger question which I think both the communities need to answer. So all of us should make our own groups or think tanks or our own committees and come up with very, very concrete suggestions, and these committees have to be from both the groups, the Metis as well as the Kukis. It cannot be a one community affair. So most important I feel is that essence of this discussion, what I have actually listened so far is that we need to have a deliberation, we have to create a platform. And I think your organization can do a wonderful job if you create a platform when we can get both these communities together in Delhi and then move to Manipur. Because unless this message is passed across in this kind of a planned and a thought of manner, I don't think this problem will ever get resolved. Thank you. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I just remember two because there are too many questions, and also, but I think they are related. One is this thing about certain people actually inhibiting peacemaking. That thing is very much there, and that's a big problem in any peacemaking effort, because you'll have the hawks and doves, and you'll never hear the doves. But the thing is, they are present, the hawks, the doves. I think we should be hopeful that they will also come forward one day, and they should be facilitated to actually come forward. That's I think the way to peace. And to do this, I think in classical statecraft, Machiavelli has actually said it, and he's got a book called The Prince. In chapter 17, this point is there, that the state, as any ruler, will have to command fear as well as love. And if you can't manage both, that fear can't let go. You can't let go of fear, you can dispense with love if it is not possible to have both. But you can't have that fear too much because that will become hatred. The fear is that you do something wrong, the state will come after you. That fear cannot be actually dispensed at any cost. And what's happened here in Manipur is that has been done. The state is not practically doing nothing. I will say Manipur is part of that Indian state as such. The Indian state is doing not much to actually instill that fear in those people breaking the law. So I think that fear should be first put in, and then we can start cultivating that love. The other thing is, of course, this is from the very realist kind of a view. In international relations, you have that realist theory, where you take, it's an anarchic kind of situation where each individual functions as their own. So when they say Ukraine cannot behave the way it wants because Russia is there, Russia start reacting. I mean, Ukraine is supposed to be a sovereign state, and yet you can't do something because of Russia, because in view of what Russia will do. That kind of thing is that realism that people are talking about. But now people are asking for something called constructivism, that states also behave like humans, that you interact, you also can exchange ideas, and from those ideas you can build those relationships. And that, I think, is what the aim should be. But in the first instance, I mean, I'm not excluding any one of these theories. You have to bring in all of them. One is to make sure the state is there. State has to ensure that nobody can break the law. If you do that, you'll be punished. Anybody. Only the state has the legitimacy to hold guns. Only the state has the legitimacy to use violence legitimately. I mean, the police can have guns, army can have guns, but that's legitimate. But anybody else having it is illegitimate. That has to be pronounced clearly, that in no uncertain term. When that is done, I think that there will be some semblance of that order. And of course, as Justice also just mentioned, well, when you do that, when you bring peace by inhibition, by deterrence, that is also defined as negative peace. That is not something which is coming out of your heart, but you're doing it because you're afraid that you've been deterred. So, but that deterrence is necessary. When the fire breaks out, you have to put off that fire first, and then look for the ways to prevent future fire. But those two things have to go parallel. So that love thing will come later on. So I think what's missing now is that it both in some ways, that fear has gone and the love is also gone. So that is actually creating this chaos that Manipur is in today. So first thing is for that order to come back is to bring back that fear of the state, and fear not in the terrifying sense, but in the sense of the fear of the law. That there is something called the law, and the state is the only custodian of that law. Nobody else can claim to be the law.
Yeah.
That has to be made very, very clear. And the other thing that I want to answer is also what the student asked about whether aggression is actually inbuilt, is primal kind of a behavior, whether it's your instinct. And I think probably it is, which is why the realism thing comes about. Otherwise, if everybody was rational, maybe there would be no fight at all. There will be a utopia. But that's not happening. So I think aggression is very much there in everybody. And that aggression has to be also sublimated. And that sublimation process is what mature politics is about. What this thing about settling disputes by democratic means, through the negotiating tables, through sharing, accommodation, these kind of things have to come in. And that's what I was also referring to as the constructivist approach to conflict resolution, not just that realism where you say, oh, the US is there, you can't do anything in Mexico because they have the Monroe Doctrine. The Cuba missile crisis, Cuba is not USA, but when they wanted to buy those missiles, USA responded. That kind of thing is that realism, you have to be also aware of what is real, but you also have to be idealistic and go to that constructivism. And just let me just add one more point, is that before I go to that point, the thing about negative peace, that absence of violence through deterrence, is actually Johan Galtung's theory. That there's also the positive peace where you build those relationships and then eliminate those causes for violence. That should also happen, and you can see that in the. Okay, let me.
Yeah. Okay, then.
Spend 1 minute,
yeah.
because one question was addressed to me.
Okay, yeah, no need.
Yeah, I'll just take 1 or 2 minutes.
Very briefly, okay,
yeah.
sir. We have to go for another round.
Fine. To respond to the student's question, I forgot your name, but you were asking about this aggressive character and the increasing violent behavior of individuals or citizens. I think, though Tamo Pradeep talked about the violent character of individuals, I also have a hope, because individuals are regarded to be having concept-bearing, characteristics. So therefore, I think we have concepts, we have reasons to actually come out of these violent situations. So I think that desire to come out of the bad state of nature was basically possible because we were increasingly proving that we were rational beings and we are concept-bearing people. So probably we have the desire to come out of the bad state of nature, and we have the desire to coexist, and we have the desire to reconcile our differences. That's one possible answer that we can give. So I think I have a hope because we can employ our concepts for a better life. The second question was from Roxon, and he was asking about, I think you are basically talking about the possibility of colonial continuity, I think. And I think in my presentation, I did talk about the continuity of the colonial perception, frontierization of people and race, for example. So I think this pattern of this pattern to witness a very silent state in some sense is basically rooted in that deficit of presence of a legitimate institution or authority, for instance. So I think I don't want to also sound like a very statist in some sense, because to sound like very statist would also glamorizing violence in some sense. But I think I want to emphasize on the mutuality of people, where they can have a better interface of ideas and their experiences. Thank you.
Sir, Anil, sir, you want to say anything? Yeah. So, Sampa, do you have anything? Sir? So now we will take another round of questions. Sir, I have interrupted you, so please go ahead. Indian Express, sir.
So this is for Justice Mridul. So my question at the time was that a certain community is stopping IDPs from returning, saying that without a political solution, they cannot return. So what would be your suggestion to this?
Thank you, sir. Yes.
I'm Ratnabali, Professor of Law from University of Delhi. See, I'm thankful to all the perspective put forward by the expert panelists, and we have people from judiciary, army, and media. My question is that when we want to look or take the, look forward and go towards peace, it's very important to establish the rule of law. So unless there is a rule of law, it's not possible to come to a peaceful situation or normalcy as we have discussed. So I would like to know from the viewpoint of judiciary, what do you think the judiciary, the army, and the media, what role can they play in bringing rule of law?
My name is Namayapam Rikesh Manga from Manipur. My question is directly to the retired Major General. Sir. We have already known that the Indian Army has failed to control the insurgency or the revolutionary groups of the Meitei. So, my question is that correct? Is that correct? India government has made a conspiracy with the cookies to control or to finish the act of the insurgency or the revolutionary groups of the Meitei. Thank you.
Can I have one question, sir?
Yes, sir.
My name is.
Just to Mr. Honorable Justice, sir, that if as a lawyer I comes to you with the problem what happened in Manipur, and says that this is we want peace because there is something missing from the government side. I'm not going to the political side again. From the government side, something missing, and as a citizen of the country, I'm not satisfied, and I come to you and as a PIL. And say that we need something, we are looking to you. What do you suggest, sir? That's the question, the first thing when I saw you, and this keep running into my mind, that what do you suggest to us, or would you, say, PL, okay, no, this band is not allowed, PL, go to the government, or go to the center, or what kind of a policy or the law, or even, at the ground level, you suggest that UPL is stand on this ground, and the government has to. I'm giving these 3-4 directions to the government and saying that you need to do that. Somewhere I think as a lawyer also that there is a failure of a constitution in the state where you say there is a crisis, stop again crisis, to why the government is there. But again, if I don't go to that again, so what is the there that we need to do to make it? And what's sad is it's really eye-opening for all of us. I think what Major Sir has said, like eye-opening for all of us. So what do you think? Like we would like to give a direction, direction for today's direction like that.
Yeah, I have one question, sir. I raised my hand multiple times. This is Nongdren. I think it's a very, very helpful discussion. Thank you for your perspective. I had one question particularly. It's open to everyone, but maybe Justice Mridul is the best person to answer this. I wanted to draw your attention on the silence of the voice of the common public. At the end of the day, what we are all discussing is with respect to the 60,000 people in the relief camps. Now, you also mentioned in your remark that they aspire to go home, wherever, be it the Métis or the Kukis. Now, typically, the civil society, they are supposed to be the voices of the people. However, unfortunately, in this crisis, what we observe is that the CSOs, instead of speaking the voices of the people, they appear to be speaking on behalf of certain agenda groups or the invisible hands that one of the panelists spoke. And I wanted to draw your attention specific to the observation of the Gita Committee report, wherein certain CSOs, and the Gita Committee report has named those 3 CSOs, wherein the family members and kins of those people who died in the violence, they wanted to bury their body and they wanted to seek compensation from the government. However, they were specifically threatened not to do so because they wanted to exploit the body of the victims to drag the violence. So I wanted your observation on the role of CSOs and, or rather, the silencing of the voice of the common public.
Yeah, thank you. Yes. Okay. This will be the last question. Okay.
So my name is Chandan, and I'm a student from JNU. My question is in line with Sir Appam, sir, and my question: if in a state like Manipur, with its 35 ethnic groups, there's going to be power relations between the groups. And I hate to be that person who quotes Foucault every time they get the chance, but Foucault also, he said that, I'm paraphrasing here, that a society without power relations exists only in abstractions. And historically, there is no denying that the Meiteis had more access to resources, even though Noni sir had pointed out that the Meiteis have also suffered discriminations. Besides that, they also the Meiteis had an upper hand in the scheme of things, maybe because of its numerical strength, among other things. Shouldn't there be an effective mechanism of addressing the historical injustice and the grievances that the smaller groups experienced in the past? The kind of dynamic between the groups are now seemingly changing, and is this conflict an evidence of it? Groups are now relatively empowered enough to bargain with the other groups or even with the state, and this should be done. This be done through a democratic mechanism? So in short, my question is how to come about a mechanism which is democratic and everyone has can raise their voice, because as said earlier, there's always going to be power relations between the groups.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, he's well taken. So, okay, one last there. So, this will be the last.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I am the last, not the least. Yeah. So, on behalf of the internal displaced people and the family of the missing people since 2023, 3rd May, my question is that there is one perception that even the missing persons cannot be declared dead till 7 years. That's why, and what could be the most appropriate approach to that. Second, on the current scenario, if the safe and secure has been restored, what could be the life going forward to avoid incidents like Kamal Babu, which has been missing and not yet been declared, if and what and not. So that's my request and questions on behalf of internal displaced people.
Yeah, thank you, sir. Yes. You please. Yeah. You want to say something, no?
Yes.
Yeah.
Good evening, sir. My name is Leshna Aribam. And the first question, I also want to put forward some points made by Dr. A.C. Apam, which is so beautiful. It's about self-reflection. It's about the Mangba. Mangba, it's very, it's something about, I would say, self-reflection, introspection, about that thing was very, very much pivotal. And my question directly is, how can societal frameworks be restructured to prioritize conciliation, self-reflection, and the promotion of empathy and understanding while fostering a culture that values active listening and inclusive dialogue as essential tools for conflict resolution, particularly empowering youth to spearhead this paradigm shift? This is a question which I want to put forward. Why there is not a single, as Sir Pradeep have also mentioned about conciliation, and I think this is the only solution for any conflict. There is no hate there. It will always make it more prolonged, and the innocent people will suffer more. This is not about me and you.
Thank you.
So thank you so much.
Sir.
So all these questions that were asked are by and large interconnected. The first was with regard to what is the most important step that needs to be taken. The first step that needs to be taken is to restore the rule of law. That's a given. You have to restore the rule of law. Now that leads to the question asked by this gentleman as a lawyer. It's no longer a hypothetical question because those petitions are pending adjudication before the High Court in Imphal. And directions have been given to the government to make sure that all the rights of the people and their properties are protected and that the highways are open for travel without any fear of being abducted, maimed, killed, held for ransom. Those directions have been given. But the separation of powers in our country requires all directions issued by any court of law to be implemented by the executive. And the refrain that we hear often enough in the state of Manipur is that because of prevailing circumstances, we have not been able to do so. With 60,000 boots on the ground, they are not being able to restore law and order, they are not being able to restore the rule of law. Now, my suggestions for resolution of the conflict, of course, the lady came up, this young girl came up with a wonderful idea that it can only be resolved through conciliation. We have to talk, we have to be empathetic to the other man's views, we have to listen. The point is that till such time there is disarmament, till the time there is disarmament, till the time that the weapons that were looted, snatched, whatever, are recovered, and till the time people with arms smuggled from across the border are intercepted and the weapons are taken from them, there is no possibility of peace returning to Manipur. And armed people are not going to permit you either to return to your homes or to live peacefully. Right? Now that gentleman at the back, I think he's from NDTV, he said that some organizations will not permit the IDPs to return home. The IDPs are not their hostages. Right? Let's be clear. The IDPs are not their hostages. They can return home provided we create an environment which is congenial and conducive to the returning home, which brings us back to the rule of law. Once law and order is restored and there is a rule of law and the groups have been disarmed of all the illegal weapons that they possess, either looted or smuggled, and there are talks which are held under the auspices of the government, that's the only way forward. External factors apart, because I'm keen on Manipur. I'm sure there are external factors. I'm not an expert on external factors, so I will not speak to that. If there's anything that I've left behind, I can address that.
Thank you very much, sir.
Yes, sir. Can I have one question regarding this rule of law? Just one question regarding the rule of law. If you remember, November Supreme Court has given 6 judges and 6 DGPs to the state for assessment. But as you know that CJ has not yet received anything from their reports. How it can help the rule of law in the future? How do you feel, sir?
Let's do like this. Let us discuss this over the tea. Okay. So, sir, briefly, sir.
So I'll just, I'll just supplement. I think even as the rule of law is necessary to begin building peace, I think peace has to be organic. It has to be from inside, from within. By within, I mean it has to be between us. It cannot be from the, from the power of the law, the center, or the, the justice of the court, but it has to be from within. That's what I thought. Regarding your story, your questions, I'm perplexed also equally. It's also because the question is quite complex in a sense that how do we, address the issue, right? And because even as we long for peace, we also need a strong hand, and so that. But I think it is, in fact, I'll just tell you one little parable, the Tangkhul parable. It seems that the Tangkhuls and Métis used to have the same penna, that violin. Okay, so he went down, and so he would come back and then play together, and then one fine day the Métis penna was going flat, according to the Tangkhul, the folk song, a folk tale. And then, so the Tangkhul went back thinking that sound is wrong, But then after a year, he came back to correct the penna, It turns out that the Métis have, evolved his penna, into a beautiful penna that you have it now. This is where I want to make it that each of us has to build on peace within.
Yeah, thank you. Just 1 minute, sir. The organizer have this MC Maite, who's.
Yes, sir, I'm here.
Yeah, okay.
My name is MC Mehta. I'm one of the organizers, but I'm putting up the question as representing my organization. See, in today's discussion, we won't be able to put whole the 19 months tragedy in Manipur in 5-6 hours. So as I work in areas of human rights, I will raise the question through the lens of human rights and international humanitarian law. No one cannot deny that Sikkim was never a part of India since till 1975. Likewise, Manipur became a part of India on 15 October 1949. And before that, Manipur was an independent republic country because Manipur had the first functioning parliament on 18 October 1948. Anyway, now we are part of India. See, one thing, there is a working paper entitled Insurgencies in India's Northeast Conflict, Co-option and Sense by Subir Bhumik, published by East West Center, Washington, in the year 2007. In page number 22 of that working paper, the UNLF, one of the oldest revolutionary organizations in Manipur, it directly criticized the Indian government of using Kuki as mercenaries to sabotage the freedom movement in Manipur. Article 1 of the Indian Constitution defines the territory of India as any other territories as may be acquired. So I wonder how democratic is our country, because the Article 1 clause of the Indian Constitution legitimize other territories to be acquired. And from, regarding this conflict, I would like to point one thing. When Chochanpur, the Meitei villages were ravaged to the ground, what was the army doing there? If India cannot contend this small internal matter, how can India fight China and Pakistan? Are the Kuki militants stronger than the Indian army, which is the 5th largest in the world? If India cannot solve the internal problem, how can we confront other nations? From human rights perspectives, if you post a social media criticizing the government, then you will be put into jail and lockup. Civilians criticizing the government are termed as terrorism. And those civilians who are dragged out from home, raped, tortured, and they are terrorists. And the civilians are terrorists, and those perpetrators are not terrorism. From human rights perspectives, there is no democratic space in Manipur now. We cannot, if I speak something which is tantamount to attack the Indian state, then I will be termed as anti-Indian, or I'm a secessionist. Now, my last observation is, in Manipur, if you see from the international humanitarian law, there is law of warfare, particularly referring to International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, taking with its optional Protocol 1 and Additional Protocol 1 and Protocol 2, India was a signatory member in 1945 of the United Nations. So India has a charter obligation. So India violates the Article 2.4 of the United Nations Charter for invading Manipur in the year 1949. So from this view, we can term the India-Manipur conflict as an international conflict according to ICCPR of Additional Protocol 1. And non-international armed conflict according to Protocol 2. Now, the pertinent question is that there has been voices from several quarters that is there a proxy war, because civilians are left unprotected in all fronts. When you visit the peripheries, you will cry. So the Jurakodar massacre in the recent incident, those 6 civilians, including 8 men infant, they were abducted from inside the relief camp. Even in relief camps are not safe. So how are our security forces doing? So any panelist can answer my question. Is there a real proxy war in Manipur? Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. Very briefly, sir, we will wind up.
Not this particular question, but I was quite interested in what Apam said about this unclean thing. And let me just, this little bit of counterpoint. That thing cannot be excused. But a little bit of counterpoint is, no, my uncle was an Orthodox Hindu. And when I entered the kitchen, I had to take a bath. I had to change new clothes and do that. And if I didn't do that, I was unclean. I would have been punished. So if that was done to another community, they would feel much more insulted. That was actually the case. It was okay pointed at the hill people because they didn't take part. Those kind of thing was the belief from this side that they were unclean, so they were not allowed them to walk into the house and all that. But if I also did it, and also in the earlier generation, probably in that generation itself, that you go to the British offices, you come back, and you have to take a bath before you enter your house. And again, that kind of thing, orthodoxy was very much there. So it was actually part of a system, ecosystem which was there. And it just happened that when it was targeted another community, it's much more hurtful. But the system itself was like that. If I was from the same family, if I went to the toilet and if I didn't take a bath after coming out of the toilet, then I would be unclean for the whole day. That kind of thing was very much there in the Metis orthodoxy, and which is no longer there. Yeah.
I think I deserve. I think I should also.
Yeah.
I think we can discuss over the.
Yeah, and also the girl or woman or daughter or whoever asked. About this identity thing, I think what the solution should be that we have to be looking for a constitutional identity, not your ethnic identity, not your religious identity. We should be able to overcome this. In fact, I had also said this in another forum of different communities.
Thank you, sir. Sir, over to you, sir. Very briefly, just 1 minute.
Just give me 1 minute to answer the lady. Yeah. On the law and order situation, is it on? Law and order situation, and there was a gentleman there who said that the Indian Army is pro one community and it's not looking after the other community. And the third question was a question on the integrity of the Indian Army was being raised. So I'll just answer very, very briefly these three questions. So firstly is, the army has never failed the nation in whatever contingency the army has been tasked. What is important is for the army commanders to be given cut directions. And these directions come from the political leaders. So if it is very, very clear that this army to sort out this situation and all the powers are vested with the army will not let you down, let me tell you one thing. So, without going into specifics of any incident, because I'm not aware of those incidents, why the action was not taken, who was responsible for that, and what are the consequences of those actions, but that will be decided by the powers to be who are controlling the state. The second aspect is the ma'am's question that you have 60,000 boots on ground, as Honorable Chief Justice also brought out. What is preventing these 60,000 boots on ground from stabilizing the situation in Manipur? That question, I think, is bothering all of us here. And we are trying to search the answers that when you have a potent force, a well-equipped and a well-armed force of 60,000 soldiers and men, why can't you stop this violence? Again, I would focus your attention. You have to be given the orders for do that. If the orders are given to the 60,000 men that you start disarming the civil society, because that is the first step. If the government of the day, whether it is the central or the state government, but they should give directions to the forces that we want the disarming of the civil society to take place. Let me assure you, the security forces, whether it's Indian Army, Assam Rifles, or whatever the force be there, they will carry out their job even if they have to lose their own lives. But these directions must come. And what are we waiting for? And from whom are we waiting for? And as somebody actually brought out here, are we actually waiting for a larger catastrophe to happen in that state? So that is my question here. It's an appeal to all the powers to be to take a decision on Manipur, and the decision must come very fast.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. I think we have to wind up. My sincere apologies to those who are not able to ask any question. I am also thankful to all the panel members. I'm very, very thankful, very, very enriching discussion on the state of Manipur. So now I hand over the program to the organizer.
A small clarification to the introductory remark that I made earlier, particularly on Meitei Alliance. I said that it is based, it's a Meitei organization based outside of Manipur. It's in India, but not outside India. So I wanted to make that small clarification. And in addition to the Manipur International Youth Center, I want to add that Irom Chanu Sharmila was the Assistant Secretary of MIYC at the time when she launched her iconic hunger strike against Armed Forces Special Power Act 1958 on November 5, 2000. I just want to clarify that. Then I think it was a very productive discussion, and everyone was much involved in all of the critical issues that we have discussed. And I thank to all the speakers, eminent speakers and personalities for overpouring the much needed dialogue or the discussion in the current conflict scenario, and also to all the participants and the audience here. So we have arranged a high tea. I hope you enjoyed the evening, and yeah, so please enjoy it. Yeah.